of the Future Lounge at the Author Services Building in Hollywood. It contains a gallery of the writer and illustrator judges, a selection of the awards the contests have received, a library containing novels and art books published by winners and judges, and a selection of photos of some of our beloved keynote speakers and guests. For nearly 4 decades, L. Ron Hubbard's Writers of the Future contest has discovered and nurtured a steady stream of new authors and artists who have changed the face of science fiction. Chosen by an impressive panel of judges, drawn from the biggest names in the genre, contest winners are given the best possible foundation for a long-standing career. Now in its 3rd year, the Writers and Illustrators of the Future podcast continues to provide advice and tips from contest judges, industry professionals, and contest winners for writers and artists wanting to take their next step, along with needed inspiration to keep on going. If you are already a regular listener of this podcast, I thank you. If you are new to it, I welcome you to the weekly installment of the Writers and Illustrators of the Future podcast. This is John Goodwin, your host. Hello, and welcome to the Writers and Illustrators of the Future podcast. This is John Goodwin, your host. This podcast is dedicated to the aspiring writer and artist and will provide inspiration and tips from top professionals in the field. Today's guest is Philippa Werner. She's the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Scribe Count, and I'm here at Superstars Conference, where I met her today, and I became immediately fascinated with what this is all about. And I think anybody who's either an aspiring writer or artist or an established writer and artist will do well to listen to what we're going to be talking about. She's the public face of Scribe Count, overseeing the customer interaction, content, and overall service side of the company. And her main goal is to reduce friction from all the subscribers. Now, what they deal with is royalties, collection thereof, and making sure that you don't miss out on any royalties that are due. So I'm really excited about this. I'm very happy I was able to meet her here. And so with that, welcome, Philippa.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So the whole need with intellectual properties and with their books or their art, they get royalties. That's how you make your living on your royalties. So how much is it a problem? Well, just as a general thing, and then we'll get into the fact that people don't realize how much of a problem it is, quite possibly. How much of a problem is it on people not being able to realize royalties due?
There's a couple of problems. So one is the sheer amount of time it takes to be collecting them. There are a lot of indie authors that were spending several hours per day collecting their royalties because they were on several different platforms. When you have a limited advertising budget, you are trying to pivot very quickly. And that means that you need to know what is going on, which meant that they needed to be on top of the royalties every day. It was cutting into their writing time. It was cutting into their just being a human time. It was also a very error-prone process because it doesn't matter who you are or how detail-oriented you are, you will eventually end up copying and pasting something into the wrong column or wrong row, and then it will take hours for you to figure out where you went wrong. You'll be working on the wrong information. So as much as you can smooth that out and automate it, that's good. Gives you time back for your art. And then there is the issue of when you're looking at a sea of numbers, you don't always catch things. And so there are 2 aspects to that. One is that being able to visualize it gives you a different picture. There are some people that can look at a column of numbers and picture the pie chart in their head. For most of us, that's really not true. And so seeing it on the page is it's genuinely different. And so there are a lot of people that are worried about distributing wide because Amazon is, the behemoth. And so they think, well, I'm afraid to move away from it. It's going to be a lot of work. And even I, who had been involved in Scribe Count since the very earliest versions, it was a revelation seeing how much was coming in from Kobo and Apple, and it really does hit differently. And if you can visualize your royalties, for instance, against your day job, or look and see, wow, I am making a huge amount in paperbacks or audio, or it gives you an idea of where to go. And then, as you mentioned, missed royalties. One of our biggest success stories so far has been someone who we went back and forth with, because they were saying you got the payment data wrong. I'm like, well, obviously we want to fix that. And it turned out that a platform that I will not name had missed paying them a whole bunch of royalties. It was genuinely a mistake and oversight, but because we had pulled the data out of their database, they were able to go back and say, hey, I never got this payment. And that was wonderful. Like, that was a great day that we got that email from someone.
Right. So now with Scribe Count, I mean, I know that the way that an author or an artist makes their living is on royalties. You get an advance, but it's advance on royalties. So it's still royalties. So what makes it so important to have something like Scribe Count to use as a tool? And I mean, we have an hour here. We're going to be discussing different aspects of this. But initially, what makes it so important as a tool as compared to just keeping your ledger there and just, okay, good. So I've got my books here and I will get them here. So I got my statement. So this is my royalties. And
yeah, it's almost like using a trope in your writing. You can go farther because you've used the shorthand. So if you take less time collecting the data, you can do more with it because you simply haven't spent all of your brain power on clicking through on this rote repetitive task. And you can go farther, and because you've collected it differently, you're much more easily able to see anomalies and just pick out different things and run with them than you would be if you were spending those hours collecting it, and then it's the end of the day and you have to sleep at some point. So
yeah. So now, like, you can file income taxes. You can do the basic, okay, here's my W-2 forms, and I'm not going to get into all that other stuff. I'm just going to file it basic and submit it and be done with it. Or you can do all the other, explore all the different avenues, and maybe you can get something here and maybe something there and turn out to do better if you have an accountant and they help you. Even though you're paying the accountant, you're able to dig much more deep into something, and their job is to know all the tax laws and codes to be able to help you as much as possible. Is that a fair comparison to what you are?
A little, yeah. And I want to be very careful. So part of my background is in finance. And we did briefly discuss, did we want to be working with any tax forms? And no, we did not want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. But we have discussed the fact that people's accountants can talk directly with us, and they can print out one report for their accountant. And so that then makes their accountant's job easier. It means the accountant can spend extra time looking for deductions and all of that. You can also track your expenses, which makes it easier to tag to different things. And yeah, it takes, even if you're using TurboTax, not having to go through and have just a guess of what you're going to have to set aside for taxes or any of that. You can do a one click and say, okay, this is how much I've made this year. This is about how much I'll need to set aside. Or, I've just flipped up a tax bracket or whatever it might be.
Right. Okay. So now with Scribe Count, the obvious first question that came up when we talked, okay, good. So this sounds really cool. So what's it going to cost me?
Yep. So
I'm a poor starving artist. I'm just making it. I'm getting it out there right now. So I got my first couple books out there, and I've got different places there. So what's in it for me?
And Randall and I both got. I don't think there's anyone in the industry who didn't get a ton of help at the start, and we both did, and we both wanted to pay it forward. So newbie authors up to $1,000 a month in combined royalties, free. Always free.
Wow. So if I sell whatever books, I mean, that's like $12,000 a year book income or royalty income, rather, not book sales, but actual royalties on my book sales. It's free with you if it's $1,000 a month. It's crazy.
Yes, we have had some pushback from our accountant, actually. But it was important. It's one of the things in the community that's really important. And so it was necessary that we say, it's even more important when you're just starting out, or say you burned out or you had a health crisis and you're just coming back in, and maybe you were making $10,000 a month before and now it's 1,000, but you don't have to pay for that month. And, if you flip up a tier, yes, absolutely, you'll have to pay. But then it really is a community thing, because that if you're in one of the paying tiers, you're helping provide it to the newbies.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very important to most of our customers as well. So,
okay. So what is that tier? So
Yep.
now I got my royalties and I'm making, so if I'm making $5,000 a month, there's $60,000 a year. So that's not too unreasonable in terms of a mid-size author there.
Mm-hmm.
So how would that go?
So between $1,000 and $2,000 a month, you'll pay $15, and then $2,000 and up, you'll pay $20, or you can
$20 per
month. And how we do it is at a 2-month lag, so that we account for things like returns and exchange rates, and make sure that we're not charging you when we shouldn't. And then if you flip up a tier and the next month you're down, you can flip down. If you are almost always in the paying tiers, you can just shorthand it, do an annual subscription, works out to $15.41 a month, and then just not have to worry about it every single month.
Right.
But yeah, so the max it costs is $185 a year, or $240 if you pay month by month.
Wow. That's great. So now if a person, he's written some books, he's got them out there, he's not just in Barnes and Noble and in Amazon and in Kobo in Canada, but he's also now he's got his books there in South Africa, he's got it in UK, he's got them in Australia. How do you guys fit in with that?
So it depends. If it's a distributor that we draw from, then that will show up in our map. So we have a map down at the bottom. You can see where you are selling books. And if suddenly something pops up and you're like, wow, I sell a lot of books in South Africa, I should do something with that, you have that information. And if it's something that's coming in from a platform that we don't have yet, you'll want to do 2 things, which is you can upload those royalties manually and then email us and say, wow, I really wish that you would pull these royalties automatically for me. And then we can reach out to that platform and say, hi, some of the authors that are selling via you would really like to combine forces. This is good for everyone. What can we do together? Let's get our developers in a room with yours. So
wow. Okay. So now Scribe Count's been around for how many years?
About a year now.
About a year now.
Last January was when we launched in 21.
Okay. So how many countries are you reaching into now?
In terms of our user base, or in terms
of how you collecting data?
So in terms of currencies, I believe there's 12 or 14 currencies that are coming in. The biggest limiting factor is usually where the big platforms distribute to. So there is definitely a dearth of Central African, particularly Southeast Asian, Eastern European distribution channels, but places like Draft2Digital are always working to get, the next Tolino or anything like that. So as they expand, we expand.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So now it seems like it's for a company, you need to have a lot of savvy on numbers. So how'd you put this together? Because obviously royalties